If you're using Prisma for data access in your application, and if you've got a need for some real-time features in your app, then Prisma Pulse can be a big help. Today we'll take a look at Prisma Pulse, how to get it set up alongside Prisma Postgres, and how to get events streamed from our database to our application when data gets changed in our database. And we'll do that by working on this application called Prisma Hut. So the idea here is that this is the board that Prisma Hut cooks are going to look at to see what orders they've got to make. So maybe somebody puts in an order from a mobile application, or data gets into the database, into the orders table from some other source. We want to immediately show that new order here so that the cooks know what to make. Right now we've got no database set up, so we've got no orders on the board, but let's go and change that. So the first thing we'll do is get over to the Prisma data platform. It's at console.prisma.io, and let's get started with a new project. Let's go over here, we'll create a new project, and we'll give it a name of Prisma Hut. The starting point that we'll want here is Prisma Postgres. And the cool thing about Prisma Postgres is that it's a serverless database, but it doesn't have any cold starts or other issues that you might run into when using serverless. So check it out here, Prisma Postgres, and choose the region you want. We'll stick with US East for now. Let's create that project. Once the project is created, it's going to start provisioning, and we get a set of keys that we can start to work with in our application. So let's copy these to the clipboard. We've got two things here, a database URL and a Pulse API key. And that Pulse API key is going to be important in just a little bit. Over in the application, we've got our schema here. We can go to our environment file and paste those keys in. We'll save that, close up the environment file, so we're all set to go here. Let's go check the status of our setup here for Prisma Postgres, and it looks like we are connected, so we should be good to go. Why don't we go and run migrations and get some data in our database? So let's get into a new terminal window here. We'll make sure we're in the server directory. We'll do npx prisma migrate dev and give it a name of init. Okay, so it looks like everything ran successfully. Let's check out this seed file I've got. I've got seed.ts. I've got some products data, so some products. We've got pizza, we've got wings, and I've got some orders data here. And what we're going to do is loop over all of this stuff and add it to the database. Just a bit of adjustment here. I want to do order of orders data. We also have this array called new orders. That's going to come into play just a little bit later. All right, let's save that. Now down here, let's do npx prisma db seed. All right, so it looks like everything ran. We've got data in our database. And to visualize that, why don't we head back to the Prisma data platform here, and let's go to Studio over in the left side. And this is going to give us a view of Prisma Studio directly in the browser. So we've got our orders table, two orders there. We can look for what else we've got here. We should have two products. Let's open that up and see what we've got. So there's our pizza, there's our wings. Looks like we're all set up with our data. Now having a look back over at our server here, we've got this file in here under server. We've got index.ts in the src directory. And we've got an endpoint for our orders. So down here, we've got /orders, and that's going to go to our order table, and it's going to look for any orders we've got. It's going to sort them by the created at date. It's going to include the product and the specifications, all that sort of stuff. So we should be good now to see everything come through in the browser from that order history. But first, let's go over to this page.tsx file. And I'm just going to comment this function call back in to fetch our order history. All right, so let's check this out now in the browser. There we go. We've got latest orders. And those are the two orders that we created with the seed script. So now let's imagine this scenario a bit more. We've got somebody that's maybe using the mobile application that we've got for Prisma Hut, or maybe there's data getting into the database in some other fashion. What we want to do is to put that data directly on the screen as soon as it is written to the database. Now, there are a couple ways that we could go about this. If we are connecting from the mobile application to the same API that we've got our main application running here, we could write to the database and then just use socket.io to push that event, push that new order to the browser here. And that is something that would work, but it does come with some drawbacks. And one of those drawbacks is that when we start to scale our application horizontally, different server instances are going to be connected to different clients. So if we had many different clients looking at this orders board, not all of them would be updated right away when that new event is pushed via socket.io. Another issue is that if data gets written to the database and it doesn't go through the API, let's say maybe we're connecting to our database from some other source, well, that information isn't going to make its way to the browser because it didn't go through our API. However, if we use Prisma Pulse, we're going to get any and all events that come from writes to our database propagated up to any spots where we're listening for them. And that's going to solve both those issues and a lot more too. All right, so that's enough talk. Why don't we get to it? Back over in the terminal, the first thing that we'll want to do is install an extension that will allow us to use Pulse with Prisma. And what that looks like is this: npm install @prisma/extension pulse. So now what do we do with that extension? Well, let's go over to our server file. It's index.ts in this case. Right up at the top, let's import it to start with. And what we do is we say, give us with pulse from @prisma/extension pulse. All right, so with pulse is the function that we're going to want to use with Prisma client to be able to use pulse. What that looks like is this. Let's come down over here to where we instantiate our client. So const Prisma equals the new Prisma client. We've likely seen that before. Let's call for extends, $extends. Then we'll pass with pulse, and we'll pass some configuration. And that config for now is going to be API key, process.env.pulse API key, or an empty string if that's not set. And if it's not set, well, things are just not going to work. So to opt into Pulse, if it's set up for us in the Prisma data platform, that's really all we need to do. We add with Pulse and we're good to go. However, we do need to do a little bit of setup here to listen for events that are going to come out of our database. And here's what that might look like. Let's give ourselves an async function. We'll call it stream orders. And now let's use the stream method that will be available to us on orders. So we'll give ourselves a const of stream, and that's going to be await Prisma order stream. Now by default, if we just call stream without any parameters here, what we'll get is any and all events that are happening in our database. Could be creates, could be updates, deletes, etc. What we might want to do is just listen for create events. And if we want to do that, we can pass this object and say, let's listen only for create events. So this is what the API looks like for that. We just say create is what we want to listen for, give it an empty object, and now that's going to filter down to just create events. And what this looks like now is we'll loop over them. So we'll say for await const event of stream. Copilot is doing some filtering on the create event here, but what we can just do is say console.log events. Let's just log them to the console for now and make sure everything is working. Then over here, when we do server.listen, let's call for stream orders. All right, let's save this. Let's go over to where we're running the server. We'll just kill that, restart it, so we're in a fresh state here. And then in the seed file, there is this extra little bit here to put in a new order. So I've got new orders. So these are the new ones after our initial seed, let's say. So let's not put in new products because that's already done. But let's loop over our new orders and let's put those in the database. We'll save this. Let's come over here to our other terminal window. And let's do npx prisma db seed. All right, so we've got a new order in the database. If we have a look over here where we're running the server, what we've got is that create command. So action create, there's the data that we created, and some metadata from Prisma Pulse. So the implication here is this: because we're listening, because we're streaming events from our database, we get that result right back to where we're running our server. This now gives us the opportunity to push this back up to the browser using something like Socket.io. As it stands in the browser, we're not going to immediately get that new order onto the screen because we're not yet handling the event with Socket.io to get it over to the browser. If we refresh here, we should see the latest order, and there it is up at the top. But let's now work on that final step to get it over to the browser. We've already got the scaffolding for Socket.io here. We're doing IO on connection, handling some things there. Let's now set up a custom event that we can listen on. So let's do socket.onOrderCreate. Let's call it that. We'll have an async function that's got an order. We can log this to the console to start. So order received. We don't want to create this new order. That's what Copilot suggested. Instead, what we just want to do is return it. So we'll do return order. Then we can get rid of this extra bit that came in via Copilot. So this bit here is going to listen for any order create events. And what we need to do here now is when we pick up an event via this stream coming from the database, let's emit that event so that it can be picked up by socket.io. And for that, we can do io.sockets.emit. Order create is the name we gave it up above. And let's pass in the event. And then we'll call for created on that event. So that's going to be the data that actually got created in the database. All right, so let's save this. Everything should be connected now. We're connected to socket.io from the front end. We'll just restart that, make sure we're fresh there. Now back over in this other terminal window, let's just run that same seed command again to get that one new product, or that one new order, I should say. So npx prisma db seed. Seed is finished. Let's check the server. There's our order. And now let's go back over to the browser. All right, latest orders. We've got that new one that just came through up top. And to reiterate here, it's not just things that are coming via our API that will show up here now, it's also anything that gets written to our database from other sources. So for example, if we're in Studio here, we could add a record here for a new order. Let's wait for this to just refresh, and then we're going to add in a new record. So add record, we'll just give it a total. It's going to be lacking some of the other data that's associated with these other orders. That's fine. Let's save that change for now. And we'll take a look now in our application. So back over the app, there is that new order. It came through immediately once we created data in our database. And that's all made possible with Prisma Pulse because we are streaming events. To get a better sense of the events that are coming through, we could look at the Pulse tab here, and we can see all of the events that have been emitted. We've got all these events here that have been tracked. So it gives us a good sense of what's going on with Pulse. So to recap here, the easiest way to get started with Prisma Pulse is to use Prisma Postgres alongside it. You can get started at console.prisma.io. Prisma Postgres is a serverless database. And it's totally free in early access, and it will maintain a free tier once at general availability. So head over to console.prisma.io to get started with Prisma Postgres and Prisma Pulse. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, or you can reach us online. We're at prisma.io on the web or at Prisma on X Twitter. Thanks for watching.